Somewhere across the horizon, another pilot watches, waiting for a command that will test not courage, but comprehension. The radar is silent, yet in that silence lives a war of frequencies. Invisible lines of power stretch across the sky. Modern military equipment, whispering their intent through electronic breath. It was not fire or fury that began this clash, but a misunderstanding born from pride. Two crews, two flags, two different languages of war, and between them 72 minutes that would change everything. Because in modern warfare, victory no longer belongs to the loudest gun, but to the quietest mind. It began at 14:30 local time. The sky above the South China Sea was the color of tarnished metal, heavy with moisture, yet the horizon shimmered with a deceptive calm. A single helicopter traced a path through that haze, a gray silhouette marked only by its patient hum. Inside, 3 souls moved with quiet precision. They were part of no grand armada, yet they carried within their instruments the reach of a fleet. Commander Hale sat in the left seat, eyes hidden behind the dull reflection of his visor. He spoke rarely. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Fraser, adjusted the navigation display, where each green pulse marked the slow heartbeat of the ocean below. Beneath them, somewhere in the folds of the sea, a diesel submarine stir, a machine seeking breath after 2 days of darkness. "Maintain current course," Hale murmured. "Active sonar, standby." The third member of the crew, Petty Officer Renner, managed the sensor erasure, a lattice of digital eyes. Every ping, every faint whisper of static was a clue. Their task was not to fight, but to listen. Then, out of the eastern clouds, a shape appeared, all sleek, angular, painted in the sharp lines of intimidation. Another helicopter, foreign, its nose tipped slightly downward like a predator scenting prey. No call sign, no greeting, only a sudden burst of motion as it cut across their path. "Unidentified rotary aircraft," Fraser said evenly, "range 500 meters. It's performing a crossing maneuver." The voice in the intercom was calm, almost detached. Yet every man aboard felt the subtle changer. The hum in the cabin deepened, the instruments vibrated in sympathy with the tension outside. Across the sky, the foreign helicopter banked again, its rotors flashing amber in the sunlight. A recorded voice broke through on the emergency frequency, filtered and sharp. "Foreign military aircraft, you are approaching territorial waters. Alter your course immediately." Renner looked up from his console. "We're 50 nautical miles from the nearest coastline," he said quietly. Hale did not respond. He simply toggled a switch, activating a pod beneath the fuselage here, the ALQ series electronic support suite, one of those pieces of modern military equipment designed not to kill, but to learn. Invisible to the eye, the helicopter began to drink in the airwaves, radar frequencies, communication bursts, even the faint electronic heartbeat of the adversary's engines. While the other pilots sought to intimidate, Hale's crew were building a portrait, each decibel a brushstroke of intelligence. Outside, the 2 machines circled each other like cautious predators. The sea below mirrored their tension, its surface rippling with the unseen tremor of distant thunder. "Do not respond," Hale said finally. "Just hold position." And so they did. No words, no counter-threat, only silence. And within that silence, dominance. The battle had begun, though no missile would ever leave its rack. For long seconds, nothing moved. The 2 helicopters floated above the sea as if suspended in amber, divided not by distance, but by philosophy. One sought to impress with noise and movement, the other with restraint. The foreign pilot broke first. His craft tilted sharply to the right, exhaust flaring orange, and a pair of flares ignited behind him, spiraling through the sky like dying comets. It was theater. An airborne warning shot, the kind of bravado meant for an audience. Inside the American helicopter, no one flinched. Commander Hale merely watched, his pulse steady, his hand resting on the cyclic stick as though controlling a heartbeat. "Record everything," he said. The ALQ system had already awakened, its sensors stretching invisible fingers across the electromagnetic spectrum. Every ping, every burst of radio chatter was absorbed and catalogued. It was as if they were standing in a rainstorm, counting the drops one by one. On Renner's display, waves of color mapped the unseen world, curves of data representing the foreign radars, frequency hops, the modulation of its targeting system, even the subtle harmonics of its rotors. "Hess, using a narrow-band targeting radar," Renner murmured. "Outdated modulation." "Russian base code, late 1990s revision." Fraser smirked softly. "So they're still dancing to someone else's tune?" Outside, the opposing pilot banked again, diving lower to cut directly across the Romeo's path. The movement was aggressive, almost reckless. Hale could see the shimmer of the other aircraft's canopy. He could almost imagine the frustration behind it. "Maintain heading," Hale said. "Let him come." Below, the ocean reflected their shadow play. Two small dots circling over a boundless expanse of blue-gray water. But above that calm surface, an invisible storm raged. Through the ALQ suite, digital ghosts collided, a signal against signal, deception against discovery. What the human eye could not see, the machines were already fighting for. The foreign radar attempted to lock on. The Romeo responded by shifting frequencies faster than the lock could stabilize, turning each attempt into a phantom. In that moment, war ceased to be about ammunition. It became a duel of mathematics, of patience, of who could hear the silence between the noise. Renner's fingers danced across his console, were logging high-resolution data on all channels. "Thermal, acoustic, electromagnetic." "Good," Hale replied. "Keep it clean." "The quieter we stay, the louder he becomes." A gust of wind swept through the cockpit as Fraser adjusted trim. The sea flashed beneath them, a patchwork of dark and silver. "You ever think," he said quietly, "that this is what war will become? No bullets, just data." Hale gave a faint smile. "It already has." The opposing pilot, unaware of how naked his systems had become, continued his performance. Tight rolls, aggressive pitches, bursts of radio static like growls through a digital throat. Yet each move betrayed him further. From thousands of meters away, American analysts aboard a distant carrier were already watching the numbers climb. The data flowing from Hale's helicopter would feed into simulations, algorithms, weapons yet unborn. For 72 minutes, this theater in the sky became a classroom of strategy. One side observed, the other revealed, and through it all, the South China Sea remained eerily Cowman waves folding into waves, as if the ocean itself was listening. In the modern battlefield, silence is not surrender, it's supremacy. The first mistake came dressed as courage. From the opposite sky, the foreign pilot banked hard and descended, his helicopter cutting across the waves at barely 200 feet. Flares hissed from its wingtips, burning trails of magnesium against the dim horizon. To any observer, it looked like defiance, raw, fearless, even heroic. But to the three men aboard the Romeo, it was the sound of a door quietly opening. Renner's console lit up with new readings. "Hayes, transmitting on a different frequency now," he said, voice steady, switching between radar bands to maintain target lock. "Keep listening," Hale replied. Each flare, each adjustment of throttle sent out new signals, electromagnetic fingerprints, unique to that airframe, that pilot, that nation. The ALQ's digital ears recorded it a la pulse width, modulation pattern, harmonic resonance, information richer than any satellite photograph. What the foreign pilot thought was aggression was, in truth, confession. At 500 meters, the two helicopters could see each other clearly now. Hale's visor reflected the glow of the opposing rotors. The other pilot gestured with his craft, quick jerks left and right, what aviators call thumping. It was an old intimidation technique, meant to force a defensive move. But the Romeo did not move. Inside, the American crew watched in silence as their opponent danced himself into exhaustion. Each roll strained his airframe, each turn bled airspeed. The machine began to protest, the whine of overtaxed hydraulics, the subtle shudder of stress through metal. Renner's voice broke the stillness. "We're picking up harmonic distortion in his main rotor. Transmission temperatures climbing about 180 degrees. Fraser let out a low whistle. He's cooking his own engines. Outside, the other helicopter lunged again, its gun turrets swiveling but never firing. A pantomime of power. Hale's mind, sharp with years of training, read it differently. Every movement had rhythm, and rhythm revealed weakness. He spoke quietly, as if to himself. "He's showing us how he fights." At that range, even the heat of the engines became a language. Through the FLIR camera, the image glowed with points of white exhaust ports, transmission housing, exposed hydraulics. Renner marked each one frame by frame. "These are the signatures we needed," Hale said. "Every temperature peak, every resonance. When he flies again, we'll already know where to aim." Fraser glanced sideways. "He doesn't even know has given it away." "No," Hale replied, "but he will." The foreign helicopter made another violent pitch upward, its warning lights flashing red across the fuselage. The sound it made was like metal, sighing under too much pride. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the flares stopped. The air grew still again, heavy with unspoken defeat. Renner leaned back from his console. "Dataset complete. All systems logged." Hale nodded. "Then we hold position. Some pouring." No need to humiliate him further. The three men sat in silence, the only sound, the low murmur of the engines and the distant hiss of the sea. Far below, the submarine they had been tracking began to stir again, spooked by the aerial commotion, now thrashing to dive deeper. The sonar feed returned with a ripple of static. Fraser looked down. "It's making too much noise. They've just given themselves away." Hale exhaled softly. "That's mistake number 2. In war, arrogance rarely kills instantly. It waits unlisteningly before it strikes." The next act of the silent war began not with sound, but with distortion. At 14:48, the Romeo's instruments detected a sudden burst from the foreign radar. An erratic, pulsing beam sweeping back and forth, desperate for a lock. Renner's display came alive with interference. "And he's trying to paint us," he said. Hale nodded once. "Then let him." Moments later, a low vibration rippled through the air, like distant thunder made of metal. A second aircraft entered the battlespace's air, a twin-engine silhouette gliding high above the clouds. Its call sign was Echo 2-1, an electronic warfare platform, its underbelly lined with pods that shimmered faintly under the sun. Fraser recognized the model. "The Growler's here." The ALQ-99 system came online, its electromagnetic tendrils reaching across the sky. Frequencies leapt, collided, then disappeared, each signal morphing faster than the human or the foreign radar could comprehend. Within seconds, Renner's screen showed chaos, the enemy radar feed dissolving into a snowstorm of white noise. "Ace blind," Renner murmured. "Completely blind." Outside, the opposing helicopter began to twist erratically, trying to make sense of a world that no longer obeyed its instruments. The radar showed 12 ghost targets signed, one flying backward, another upside down, one impossibly hovering inside its own cockpit reflection. Fraser watched, half in awe, half in pity. His chasing ghosts. Hale said nothing. His attention was fixed on the ocean below, on the quiet pulse of the sonar still marking the submarine's last known position. To him, the spectacle above was only proof of something larger, that control in war no longer came from numbers or firepower, but from command of the unseen. The radio crackled once more. A faint, nervous voice, "Foreign military aircraft, respond. You are being." "Agay!" The transmission cut off. drowned in static. Renner smiled faintly. We've jammed their comms too. Not jammed, Hale corrected. Rewritten. The Growler systems weren't merely blocking signals. They were altering them, feeding fragments of false information back into the opponent's sensors. To the foreign pilot, the Romeo appeared to split, multiply, vanish, reappear. Each second widened the gulf between what he saw and what truly existed. It was more than interference. It was deception made into art. Full-spectrum dominance, Renner whispered. It's beautiful. Dangerous, Hale replied. When men start calling control beautiful, wars never end. The wind shifted. The ocean below darkened as a storm front approached Athena, heads rolling like steel battalions. Lightning flickered in the distance, echoing the chaos on the radar screens. In that charged silence, the Romeo hovered steady. Every system operated flawlessly, its engines whispering like a meditation. Around them, the electromagnetic storm raged, unseen by human eyes, yet bright as daylight to the sensors of both machines. The foreign pilot fought his controls, switching frequencies, increasing power, turning his radar off and on in desperate cycles. But each attempt only betrayed another layer of vulnerability. His radio encryption revealed its age, his systems, their design lineage. To the Romeo, he was not a threat anymore, he was a data set. Commander, Fraser said quietly, he's burning up his circuits. Then he's teaching us well, Hale answered. The Growler banked away, leaving the sky eerily still again. In its wake hung the remnants of electromagnetic afterglow, like ripples of heat above a desert road. The foreign helicopter drifted slightly off course, its once confident posture now trembling. Renner saved the last transmission log and looked at his commander. We have everything. Frequencies, pulse codes, harmonics, even voice patterns. Hale looked through the canopy at the fading horizon. Good. Then let's give him back his silence. He powered down the jammer. The storm subsided. For the first time in nearly an hour, the air was quiet again. But the message had already been sent, written not in words, but in waves. The new battlefield is not the land, nor the sea, nor the sky. It is the spectrum. The silence did not last. It rarely does. Moments after the jammers went quiet, the opposing helicopter lurched sideways as if struck by an unseen wave. Its nose dipped, engines whining in protest. Smoke coiled from the exhaust, poured sound, thin at first, then darker. Through the binocular feed, Renner could see the shimmer of heat around its turbines, the faint glow of overstressed metal. He's pushing his engines past limit, Renner said. 105% output, maybe more. Fraser checked the gauges. Not suicide, but the foreign pilot had no choice. Running would mean punishment. Failing would mean disgrace. So, he did the only thing pride allowed. He fought the air itself. The helicopter jerked upward, nose trembling, stabilizers overcompensating. Warning lights flickered inside its canopy like dying fireflies. Each movement became slower, heavier, as though the sky itself were turning to tar. Hale watched without satisfaction. He's trying to recover control. Renner's console glowed with lines of telemetry, hydraulic pressure dropping, transmission temperature deep in the red, control servos lagging by fractions of a second that meant eternity in combat. Coils breaking apart, Renner whispered. Through the FLIR lens, they could see the vibration patterns of the rotor disc, the oscillation growing violent. The airframe began to hum, a low, metallic moan carried on the wind. It was not the sound of power, but of surrender. Fraser adjusted trim, keeping the Romeo steady. Permission to transmit, sir? Hale nodded. The co-pilot's voice, calm and deliberate, cut across the static. Military aircraft. This is a United States Navy helicopter operating in international airspace in accordance with international law. We will maintain course and altitude. There was no response, only the faint hiss of a channel flooded with interference and, beyond it, the slow groan of machinery dying in midair. For a brief moment, the two helicopters flew side by side, one steady, the other trembling. Through the glass, Hale could almost see the foreign pilot's face. The tension in his jaw, the disbelief in his eyes. "He's just a man," Hale said quietly. "A man who followed an order." Renner paused his recording, and the cabin filled with the rhythmic hum of their own rotor saying. Strong, consistent, almost compassionate. Below them, the sea stretched vast and merciless. The submarine they had been tracking was gone now, fled deeper into the dark, leaving nothing but ripples. But, in truth, it no longer mattered. The true objective had been achieved. Fraser checked the system logs. 72 minutes of continuous data collection, every band, every pulse. Hale nodded, still watching the faltering helicopter ahead. 72 minutes of silence, teaching the world how loud arrogance can be. The foreign pilot made one last, desperate climb. The engines howled, the fuselage quivered. Through the thermal display, he was a beacon of heat and despair. Then without explosion, without flame, his helicopter sagged like a marionette, with its strings cut and limped away into the mist. Renner whispered, "Do we pursue?" Hale shook his head. No. He's already met his consequence." For a long while, no one spoke. Only the wind filled the void where conflict had once lived. The sun broke through the clouds then, casting gold over the waves. It turned the sea into a mirror, one that reflected not victory, but understanding. Fraser finally said what they all felt. "He didn't lose to us." Hale looked ahead, eyes distant. "No, he lost to his own noise." When the last echo of the rotors faded, the sea returned to its stillness. The sky, once trembling with invisible energy, now hung quiet and pale, as if ashamed of the noise it had carried. The Romeo turned west, engines low, slicing through the mist like a thought leaving the mind. Inside, the crew spoke little. Their instruments, their notes, the 72 minutes of recorded signals, all stored neatly in the heart of the helicopter. A treasure not of gold, but of understanding. In the logbooks of the future, those files would be catalogued as intelligence, tactical advantage, a lesson written by military equipment that never fired a shot. Yet Hale knew better. It was something else entirely, a meditation on silence, on how the modern world fights wars, not with destruction, but with awareness. He looked out through the canopy as the light caught the horizon. Somewhere behind him, a pilot was returning home, carrying not victory, but shame. And still, Hale felt no triumph, only the quiet weight of what had been learned. These modern military equipment, he thought, are built to dominate. But if domination means forgetting humanity, then we have lost already. Below them, the South China Sea glimmered, vast and indifferent. Its waves whispered the same ancient rhythm they had sung for centuries, of power, rising and falling, of empires built and broken, of men forever trying to master the silence between heartbeats. Fraser adjusted the comms. All systems green. Heading home. Hale closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the hum of the engines, the heartbeat of machines, of people, of lessons yet unlearned. War, he realized, had changed shape. The new front was not drawn on maps, but across the electromagnetic spectrum. And in that realm, victory belonged not to the one who shouted loudest, but to the one who could listen longest. True power, he whispered, is the ability to hear before you strike. As the helicopter vanished into the sunset, its shadow rippled across the sea like a signature. Somewhere in that fading light lived the truth every soldier eventually learns: silence is not absence. It is wisdom, peace, freedom. In the age of satellites and supersonic fighters, what happens when silence becomes the deadliest weapon? Over a restless sea, where clouds crawl like slow artillery smoke, one helicopter glides alone, its blades cutting through the humid air of the South China Sea. No missiles, no roar, only the hum of machines and the tension of eyes behind tinted glass.